What's up, everybody? Welcome to the channel. OG here, and I wanted to go over some ratings as well as some players to watch. Now, obviously, right off the bat, you aren't going to get most of these players that we are looking at now. However, it is good to note the ratings changes because this also changes the likelihood of you packing some of these players. Every year, there's certain players that fall under that threshold that make them more packable, right? In the vast majority of packs that you'll be getting, whether it's with your FC points or just completing objectives, things like that. When players fall below a certain rating, you have more likelihood to pack them. These higher rated players, you'll get them, soon enough, but they won't be in your initial team. So as we're going through these, you can pause and look at any of the changes. Once we get towards the end of this video, you'll actually see a list of first attackers and then defenders, right? Not in any particular position that you can keep an eye on that you could absolutely get right off the bat. Now, why is this important? Because I always like to hit the ground running, right? I don't just go right in blindly to battle, right? I'll play squad battles, different things like that. Get my team where I feel that no matter who I play against, I can compete, right? Meaning, if you go in right off the bat with your team they give you, and you got silvers and bronze players and 40 pace center backs and defenders, and you might play an opponent that you would normally crush, and those stats can make a difference if they put in the due diligence, which doesn't take that long, just to even get a common goal team, right? The bottom line is this: you're going to have lower stats, but you want to make sure, especially defensively, you have pace. In the attack, same thing. You want to make sure you have a little bit of pace, and then from pace, you want to look at the dribbling, then the shooting, or if you have a pass particular position, the pace, and then the passing. Why is pace so important at the beginning? Because no matter how good a player may be, they might have an 80 rated player and an 80 rated player. But one has 70 pace and let's just say 82 defense. The other one has 88 pace and 72 defense. Let's just say it's reversed even. Okay? The speed difference between that super low player and the higher rated player is going to make their defense essentially null and void, right? There's certain, I would say, exceptions, but with these common and lower rare gold players, those differences aren't going to be as pronounced. Maybe with certain heroes and icons. I'll give you an example. Van Dijk. He's right at the edge of what you would say is the lowest pace you would like with a center back. However, he is always the best center back in the game because in his other areas, his positioning, his ability to get in and win tackles, just that player ID that he has is so spectacular. He is going to be a top center back, even on his decline, all the way down to, I'd say, like 73, 72 pace, right? Once you get into the 60s or even, 70, 71, it's kind of more of a toss-up, but still he'll be usable then because his player ID is so good. It just is going to get borderline. He's going to get smoked by some of the super fast players. But for now, even with that 78 pace, you might not go for other center backs or defenders with that. But Van Dijk, 100% you would go after him. Rodri with 60 pace, he's not likely to be someone you would go after, right? Even with that higher rating. You would take someone much lower rated with higher pace. And Rodri is one of the highest rated players in the game. So right off the bat, you got to look at pace. As you go forward, as these players become better, pace is still important, but there are other areas that can make up for the lower pace. Another example, Yamal, right? He isn't the most high-paced player right off the bat, right? When you get him. Now, obviously, his ratings are just going to keep going higher and higher as he gets better and better. But even this past year's card, right? He had 82 pace to start, but he had 82 dribbling. So you throw a Hunter on him, and with that exceptional dribbling for a lower rated gold card, he was more than viable to start in your team, right? So there's going to be plenty of examples like that where players make up for that lower pace in other areas. But I would say once you add on, let's say, a Hunter or a Catalyst, and then after that would be like an Engine, or if it's defensive player, an Anchor, you want to be in the mid 80s at least, okay, after the chemistry style. If you can get into the 90s, great. Now, very rarely are you going to find a player at the very beginning, right? I'm talking right off the bat, that has 90 plus pace that isn't usable, meaning their other stats are so low that it doesn't matter how good their pace is. There will be some players like that, but it's very few and far between because everyone's going to have these lower rated teams. Now, why is this so important to recognize? Because you're not going to want to just stay in squad battles all the way until you get a team full of starters that's all viable as far as like 82, 83, 84 rated players that you actually want. You're going to want to hit the ground running, which means putting a team together that just is competitive. Then you start to get into the different modes and you get a head start during that, especially considering, I'm just assuming everyone's ordering the Ultimate Edition, right? Because if you're watching this video, if you're putting enough time and effort to look at things like this, most likely you're going to also put in the extra money to get the Ultimate Edition. If you don't, so be it. You will be fine. But if you are getting the Ultimate Edition, you want to hit the ground running and get that head start on these other players that have to wait a week to get going. Now, if you don't get the Ultimate Edition, it's the same thing. You'll just be a little bit behind the players that started Ultimate Team, right? You want to get a viable team put together as quickly as possible so you can get out on the pitch and start competing, right? So, for example, as these ratings work up, whether it's attackers or defensive players, you don't want to wait all the way until you get, let's say, a Baltimore on the wing at 84, right? You want to get going once you get a team full of Dennis Mann, those type of players who are 75 rated, but they have the pace, they have the dribbling. Once you put a chemistry style on them, they can get out there and compete. They might not be as good as, like I said, that 84 rated Baltimore or someone higher. However, they're more than enough to get you going where when you play these teams, even if they have a team full of higher rated golds, you'll be fine, right? The difference isn't going to be big enough to affect the outcome of the game. Now, as you know, there are going to be many players like there are every year that have the advantage of playing the beta, so they know what to look for. They've got to actually play a version of the game pretty close to the final version. There's going to be some tweaks, but for the most part, especially when it comes to like players and the type of players they want to look for, they have that advantage, right? However, you have a huge advantage this year, even more than previous years. By you, I'm talking about the players who didn't get the beta, right? I've had several years where I've got access to the beta. I've had other years where I didn't. And I came in fully prepared the same way every single time because there's enough information leaked. But this year, it's even more so because so many players were invited to play the game before the beta, and EA Sports, for whatever reason, let these players talk about that, but not their experience with the beta. So, on top of that, you also have all the footage that they released, whereas previously they just do the deep dives and it's pretty much a bunch of cinema stuff. You don't get nearly as much visuals of the gameplay that we got this year. You add that to the developer interviews and the fact that the content creators that played the game could talk about it, not the beta version, but before, and you have a good idea of what type of players you should go after, which I already released a video on this. Make sure you check that video out because it tells you the exact player type that is going to be OP. And to find the video, you literally just type in FC26 OP players or something like that, or you can just search that type of title in my videos. It was very recent, and I will continue to pump out content that will help you prepare so you hit the ground running day one for FC26. If I were you, I would take note of all these players I listed here. So, right off the bat, you know what players to keep an eye out for, and you know which players to search for on the transfer market that you can get for cheap without a doubt. So, until next time, if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to smash that like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time. Peace!